failures take us exactly where we're supposed to be, and what we learn from them really helps us grow. So that's my whole ethos. It's never too small of an amount to start investing because it adds up over time, compounding.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always telling people, like, even if it's £10, £20, whatever you can put in is worth putting in because you're starting that habit.
Hi, Grace. I'm super excited about this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today around the conversation about, as we know, money and our relationship, or your relationship to money, success, wealth, but also a really interesting topic when it comes to women in particular. And it's talking about failure, because I believe we are taught as women not to fail and to be perfect. And so I'm really looking forward to digging a little bit deeper into failing and how we fail successfully, maybe if we call it that way. Over to you. I'd love for you to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you are doing.
Sounds good. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me. I am Grace Miller, and my current role that I'm in is the head of failure and experimentation at a company called Flight Story that is home to podcasts around the world like The Diary of a CEO, hosted by Stephen Bartlett, We Need to Talk with Paul C. Brunson, and Begin Again with Davina McCall. And my previous background is in social media and marketing, but now my role is to help our team and podcasts learn as fast as possible and grow through experimentation and failure.
And I think already there you mentioned something that's really interesting, and that's learning and failure kind of go together. And I find sometimes because when we as women are afraid of failure, we can also miss out on the learning part. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what you think about that, and how maybe you've learned from your failures, and how you're applying that in your both personal and professional life.
Yeah, I think especially women definitely fear failure more, but I think across like the world in general, and it's funny, I was talking with quite a few people on LinkedIn about it yesterday, is like lots of people fear failure. And it's super common because when we're in school, you are not allowed to fail because you won't pass your exams to then move up a year. Then in university, if you go to university or college or wherever you go, you also can't fail because more exams. And then in life, in work, we're taught not to fail because if we fail, is that risking losing our jobs? And it's a whole psychological safety piece of how do you encourage your team to not fear failure. And I think we can be comfortable with it in some senses and not comfortable in others. And whether it's a high stakes environment, like your job is on the line in your whole life. But I definitely have seen it's more common in women to probably like be less risk takers, less of pushing out and going, okay, let's try this and see if it works. And if it doesn't, it's okay. I've learned from it. And so, yeah, I just really want to encourage around the world of how people can take more steps to try new things, experimenting, failing. But a failure isn't a failure because we're learning from it. And I've had so many myself over the years. But the best part is they've all led me here. And I think, not to sound too spiritual, but failures take us exactly where we're supposed to be. And what we learn from them really helps us grow. So that's my whole ethos around it.
Yeah, that's super nice. And seeing that I live in Ibiza, a bit of spirituality is absolutely okay on the podcast as well.
I
Um,
love
and what about when you were growing up? Was was failure something that you were open to already then, or have you had to evolve into accepting more failure or embracing failure?
I think, yeah, my dad is an entrepreneur and he has his own
Mm.
business. And it's definitely something that as I was growing up was definitely more encouraged from a trying new things, see what you like to do. I did horse riding, I did gymnastics. What else did I do? I did kind of everything under the sun that you could try, and which is so nice because it's encouraged me to keep doing that throughout my life. But like my parents also encouraged me to always ask questions, which is kind of the other side of experimentation, trying new things, being curious. And so my family and I always laugh about it because we were watching some home videos, I think it was last year, from when we were younger and my brother was born. And I was asking questions when he was literally a brand new baby in hospital still. And I was asking all these questions about what the recording was doing with my dad was doing with the camera. It was something so weird, but I was so curious about everything. And keeping that curiosity throughout my life has been so nice. But in failure, seeing my dad as an entrepreneur really encouraged me, and he was in the travel industry, which went through obviously 9/11, um, really just stopped the whole travel industry, and that's where he lost his first business, and then he restarted it. So I've seen him, even though I was very young when that happened, seen him go through a lot of failure and learning, and the resilience built from that. And I think seeing it firsthand and seeing actually he's still doing okay and is still successful is really nice and reassuring that actually it can fail, but you can take the learnings. And he's one of the most innovative, hardworking people I know. And always is trying to find new ways. He was the first person I ever heard speak about AI, especially in the travel industry. And so those sort of things of even though he's failed multiple times, he's still come out successful. And so it's nice and like reassuring to have a parent like that who really embodies failure and experimentation.
Super nice. And I think, unfortunately, maybe a lot of people don't have those role models growing up, both when it comes to the acceptance of trying and failing, as you said. But the other big topic that we cover is obviously money and your relationship to money. And we often hear that when it wasn't talked about when well, people we talked to were growing up and so on. So how was that in your household, or how did you experience people's relationship to money growing up?
Yeah, as much as like I say, my dad was amazing at experimentation and failure and running his business. The other side of it is it definitely I was not educated on money compared to some of my friends. My and whether that's because I lived in Australia and they maybe had different backgrounds of parents and their experience with money. But I didn't really know what investing was when I was younger. My mum definitely, when I started working, I think I started working at 14 at like a shop, casually while I was at work. And my mum took me to set up my first bank account, which was exciting. And I was really good at saving because my money would just go in there and I didn't really have much to spend it on because you're at school every day. And the weekend was the only time. And so I saw it and it was still, it sounds olden, even though I'm not old, but it was like a paper bank account where it would be printed out, which is now that doesn't exist at all. But back then it was really cool, and I got to see and go and get it taken in and printed on there of how much I had in my savings. And so it really did encourage me. I was like, that's so cool to save and see your money go up. But in terms of investing and understanding how do you make money, um, I wasn't didn't get the education side of it, I would say, not through school, not through like family or parents, friends or anything until I was a lot older in terms of like financial education. But from a savings point of view and learning about how to set up a bank account and those sort of things, I definitely did when I was younger. But even I think it's interesting now looking back of how parents can have such different almost like financial spending um capable or like I want to say like financial spending decisions, and my dad is very much not stingy at all. He will go and spend money, and if he has it he'll spend it. He doesn't feel like he has to hold on to it and be secure and keep his money safe. And my mum's similar, um but my dad is very much not a like never told us we didn't have money. We were always allowed to get what we wanted or go on holidays and things. And so yeah, I think it's a really in now looking at it, I see that in myself of not I won't go and not to sound privileged, but I won't go and like look at the prices of things and be like, oh, I can't afford that. If I feel like I have the money and I want to get it, I will.
Mhm.
And definitely I can see those bits in myself, but then I've also loved learning about financial education through books, through courses. podcasts especially, and that has helped me develop more of like a saving and investing mindset as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you said about your dad and yourself not feeling like you can't afford, because I think there's really doesn't really matter if you have a lot or a little amount of money. That mindset somehow is there independent of that. And a lot of it, I think, comes from childhood. So the fact that you experienced your dad being generous with money or generous with what money can offer, it sounds like that then translated into your life.
Yeah,
And
I,
that's
I've
really,
you're
yeah.
spot on. I've seen it. I've seen it in friends as well, where they or their parents are a lot more reserved with their money, um, and it's yeah very different mindsets and almost like they're in a scarcity mindset, even though they do have money there and savings accounts or can financially afford it, they're still in the scarcity mindset. And I don't think it's a right or a wrong, but I think it's sad that we have one life to then live in a scarcity mindset of finance all the time.
Yeah. And I mean, I think also for me, what we look at is how that sort of scarcity mindset doesn't necessarily only translate into money, but it translates into other areas of your life in terms of feeling wealthy. Wealthy doesn't have to just be money. It can be a lot of other things. It also translates into self-worth. So do you feel that you're worthy? And I think there's a very close relationship between how you feel about your own worth and how you relate to money. I
Love
don't
that.
know if that's something that you've thought about or experienced, or if you have any comments on that, it would be
I
interesting to hear.
I love that like 100%, and I've seen it in like I obviously am a lot more comfortable with spending money, and I can see like the difference, as you say, or connection between self-worth and financial habits in comparison to my friends who are a lot more reserved with spending their money. And yeah, I think it's spot on of that they don't see the same self-worth as what I would see, which is actually really sad when they are so amazing and incredible people. But exactly what you're saying is spot on to what I've seen.
It's yeah, it's really it's interesting. And it's I mean, I think obviously it's hard to change, but I think one of the things that we're trying to do is just talk about money, talk about self-worth, and create more awareness around it. So maybe because you're mentioning a lot, what you see yourself versus your friends. So I'm curious to hear, do you talk about money and these topics with friends? Obviously, you didn't talk that much about it growing up with your family. How has that changed? And yeah, do you talk about money today?
Yeah, I think it depends on the friends. And so I think some people are more open to like discussions and feedback. So if it was something like you say about their self-worth, it's hard to have that discussion, I think, um, because it's a pretty vulnerable discussion and the person has to be open to wanting to hear feedback. Because I think, as you say, there's a lot more deeper rooted than and are usually in their childhood than just not wanting to spend money. But I do have a lot of conversations with friends in terms of like investing, saving, buying property, those sort of conversations, rather than so much the deep ones about self-worth yet. But I'm sure it will get there one day now that I've heard that analogy.
Oh, but it's really nice to know that you're talking about investing and so on, because again, I think that is a topic that is still quite taboo, especially for women. I mean, we are often taught that we should be happy with what we receive. We receive what we're worthy. So again, linking that to our personal worthiness. But I think that often leads to the fact, or it can be underlying factors that influence the fact that women don't, for example, negotiate salaries or negotiate mortgages or whatever it might be. But again, because they believe that they will receive what they are worthy. So talking about money, I think, is also potentially a way to start realizing that you are worthy of more, and making it easier to um, yeah, realize your own worth. So it's nice to
Yeah.
hear.
No, I completely agree. 100%.
And maybe, I mean, we touched a little bit about it. I said, we think that wealth is not just monetary wealth. So I'm super curious to hear your thoughts around definitions of wealth and success, especially coming back maybe to the fact of your job title around failure. How could you be successful when you fail, etc. And yeah, talking a little bit more about that.
Yeah. I actually see wealth and success as very individual, and I think it's how you define it yourselves. For me, or for what I would say a lot of people obviously see it as financial, but I think for me it's very much if I have goals and I or am happy with where I am in life, is that I have all the wealth I need. So if I'm happy with where I am spending my time working, if I am happy with where I live or the surroundings I have and the people that I get to spend time with, that is wealth to me. It's not about having money. And I think that's only come to fruition recently, and because I bought a house last year, and I then said, okay, well, what's the next goal? And I was like, but why does there have to be another goal? Why does it obviously amazing to keep striving for more? But I thought, why can't we be happy when you have a house or
Mhm.
when you feel financially stable? You don't always have to have more. And I think it's part of society nowadays as well, of like consumerism, but also feeling like you have to have more. And I think for me, it like wealth or happiness, it's like just happiness in where I am in life. It's not a financial number. It's can I afford the current lifestyle that I'm living or want to have? And as long as I'm happy, that's what matters most.
Really nice. One of our earlier conversations on the podcast, we talked about definitions of enough. So that's kind of also, a definition of wealth is realizing and defining what is enough for you. And as you said, instead of setting your next goal and striving for more, maybe setting your enough goal and not setting that next goal and realizing that you've reached enough. And of course, that doesn't mean that you should lose ambitions, but maybe redefined or yeah, help that in terms of what wealth means. So yeah, interesting.
I love that. I love that so much because it's true and it's something I have like literally in the last maybe 6 months just thought, actually, is it not amazing just to be happy that I have a house instead of saying, oh, how do I save up for a second house? And it's like, actually, let's just be happy in the moment and say, you are enough. Like, it's so nice. And I love that.
Nice. And so maybe you said for you, wealth and success are what very different. So would you be okay to talk a little bit about what your definition of success is then and how maybe that has also evolved, I don't know, over time?
Yeah. I think for if wealth for me is like being happy at wherever I am in life and being enough, success for me is I am very, as much as I say being enough and being happy there, I am also a very goals oriented person. And every year, then month, and then week, I write down goals that I want to achieve. And transparently, a lot of them fail. So many of them don't get ticked off because life happens and my job takes priority, and then all of my personal goals don't happen. And then other weeks, like I'm still have needed to be booked a doctor's appointment for a month and I still haven't done it. And like that's a failure for me. But I see success as actually achieving the goals that I want in life, at that period of my life. And whether that is financial goals, whether that's I was actually writing some financial goals last night because I thought, where do I want to sit? What do I want to strive towards next? But I'm very much a goals oriented person and I see success as achieving those goals in comparison to obviously wealth of happiness.
That's really nice that you write down goals. I mean, both financial and others. I think that often we have very clear goals in our professional lives and we don't really or not to the same extent that do that in our personal lives. So it's yeah, it's
No,
that you do that.
yeah, I was going through them last night and I started it in 2023. on my notes app, just writing them down, and I like copy and paste the format each month. And it was interesting to see like, is there anything still on it from 2023 that I haven't done 2 years later? And that's the reality. Like some things I still won't have done. And maybe if it's on there and I haven't done it, it's not supposed to be part of the journey of what I want to do because I clearly haven't done it for a reason. But I love like I think it's focusing me towards those goals because otherwise, like you say, things take precedent of looking after a family or um work or financial things over actually looking after yourself. So I try to make sure to do all of them on the list.
And did you have some on the list still since 2023? And you don't have to tell me what they were, but if they
I
were.
I actually don't know. I think one of them is still focusing on my health, that it's been a journey over like since 2023 to now, and it's still one that I am really wanting to focus on. But most of them change. Usually they're on it for less than a few months because they're more short term towards the longer term goals. But also life changes all the time. And 4 years ago, I wasn't even living in England, and I never would have thought I would move here. And so it's hard. I find it really hard to set super long-term goals. Um, but I know one day when I have my own business, right now I'm not working towards that goal directly, but I know everything I'm doing now is learning for that goal in the future. So yeah, they're more, I do break them down though into like health, finance, like personal branding and my personal work, my actual job. What are the other categories? And then like other things that I need to do that have been on my to-do list and I've been avoiding. And so those sort of things and making sure I make them happen. Like when I started recently was if I cook lunch at home and bring it in, which is helping both my health and my finances,
Yeah.
I will then transfer myself £10 each day into a savings account as a like well done, because psychologically I'm telling myself well done and monetary wise, so that I'm then starting a better behavior because I don't like cooking. Which sucks because I want to enjoy it. But I thought if I force myself to do that, I like saving money. So there's some sort of reward in there. So yeah, that's a recent one I started.
That's a really nice one and really, I mean, easy for others to copy as well. And I've heard quite a lot about how, yeah, if you procrastinate about something you don't like doing, give yourself something small, nice to do at the same time. So if you hate,
Yeah,
I don't know, doing your end of month budget or whatever, beginning, then offer yourself a latte to always drink at the same time. So you have something nice to look forward to at the same time. And yeah, I mean, that's similar to what you're doing. Really
yeah,
nice. It's a good takeaway. But and yeah, I mean, uh, you said you also sort of fail a lot on those goals. I'm still curious because it is your job, but more than anything, it's also, as we said, something that a lot of people feel uncomfortable with. How do you take those things that you don't sort of manage to accomplish on your goals list? How do you handle that? And do you have sort of tips and recommendations for how to then deal with those personal failures in a sense?
yeah. If they have been failed multiple months in a row, I'll then assess like, did I ever want that goal or was it something? And I think it's really interesting the whole New Year's resolutions. Obviously, I know we're not at the end of the year yet, but I'm sure at the end of December or start of January, everyone will start writing them. And how many of them actually last, let alone like goals throughout the year. But I think in the moment you can write down a heap of goals and think, I want to do all these things. And then in reality, what actually happens is your actions show what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And it's happened for me. Like sometimes I'll choose the chocolate bar over the fruit. And I'm like, okay, I made a bad decision because that's not my goal. But I've realized that was some of my goals that I put on my list originally and thought, okay, I failed at that, but there's a bigger reason behind it is the learning of why did I fail at it? And it's either because I didn't want to do it or it's because my behavior was not right and I was either being lazy or I was tired because of something else. And it was basically I just do a reassessment every month to say, what did I actually want to do? what did I not want to do? Some of my goals are too easy. Like I have a reading list, which I know I like reading, so shouldn't even be a goal. But I really reassess and go, okay, that was on there. I didn't do it. Why did I or did I not do it? But I think what's really helped me, like we just said before, is having something associated to it that is rewarding. So for me, I don't enjoy cooking as much. My brother loves it. Don't know how one got the cooking bug and not the other. Um, I wish I liked cooking because I love delicious food.
Yeah.
But I love going and buying it out because it tastes better than my cooking. Um, but that has honestly been a game changer habit for me because now I go, I want to cook because it's cheaper. I worked it out the other day and I made fried rice for work this week, like a chicken egg fried rice. And I think it cost me about £5 or £6 for I cooked 6 meals out of that. And there was leftovers. So £6, almost a pound a meal in comparison to what I could be spending in London, which ranges from a Tesco meal deal for £3 all the way to it could be a £15 salad from the salad project. And if I'm spending £15 every day, let alone my train cost to get in and everything else, it really adds up. And so having that reward of saying when you cook, you're getting £10 has been game changer. And I'm now trying to set that for everything. So it's not just a financial reward, but finding what is the reward for doing that. And it's the whole marketing. Like I literally heard it in uni, and I don't know why it's taken me so many years to decide to do it on myself. Is obviously when you have, I think it's like Pavlov's,
Yeah.
and it's like the
Little
dog
bell.
and
Yeah, yeah,
like spot on, and it's exactly that of when you can get the dog to salivate for the food, and then one day you take away the food and the dog will still salivate when it hears the bell. And it's so interesting. So I'm hoping one day I can take away sending myself £10 and just enjoy cooking and saving money.
yeah.
But right now it's working really well, and I get to say at the end of the week if I've brought food every day, it doesn't even have to be 10, it could be £5. But like I've saved myself that money. It can go towards something else in the future instead of just eating out. And it's benefiting my health, which is eating healthier, and my bank account. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, it's really nice. I think it's really nice way to, as you said, to motivate yourself. But also you mentioned like trying to understand the underlying factors of when you fail something. What was the original maybe idea, but also what was the underlying factor that motivated you in the case of the money, etc., and you're eating out, or that led you not to follow through on a goal that you had. So yes, it's really interesting. Um, Maybe, I mean, because yeah, you gave a lot of really, really interesting personal examples, but for someone who is not in a job where experimentation and failure is what they do every day, do you have any recommendations or ideas about how to implement more of that acceptance to failure, especially in a high, which is a high risk situation at work, where, as we said, the potential downside of failing is losing your job. How would you still incorporate more of that in professional settings?
Yeah, it's really starting with the little things. And so if you're going to try something new or you're potentially trying something that might fail, it's making the failure as small as possible. So instead of you want to do a new marketing campaign, let's say, and you are testing an entire new audience, you have a female-based product and you want to market to men, maybe. Instead of going and blowing your budget and spending 100 grand, maybe you just spend 1,000 and test it originally. And that does can be across anything, and we do that ourselves. So if we right now on our like website testing like different small elements, so we're not going to absolutely crash the entire website and everyone hates it and won't shop on it. It's testing little things and then going, okay, that worked. It did fail or it didn't fail. If it failed, that's okay. We learned from it because we learned this, but we didn't lose all of our entire sales for the month. And if it succeeded, amazing. We've learned whatever worked and then continue doing it and iterating. And I think that's what people don't understand as much when they hear experimentation. They think it has to be this massive, profound experiment. And it doesn't. It's like anything in life, it's little things that get you there. And that's, to bring it back to money, is exactly like saving. It's the little things. It's not like, oh, just put in one lump sum, cross your fingers and hope for the best, or investing. You want to invest bits of money all the time so that it's different um values on the stock market and things. So it's the same with experimentation. If we do constant experimentation all the time, we're going to learn at a faster rate, but we'll have some failures in there, but they're not going to like be catastrophic and hurt the business.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And we, a lot of our audience is also are also female entrepreneurs and solo entrepreneurs, either starting out. So there, it's also, about taking the step of trying something that's completely new, but oftentimes, obviously, the idea is then maybe to start as a side project or so on. And I think that fits quite nicely where you start and iterate on a smaller scale first. Um, yeah, so that fits nicely with that idea as well. Nice. Um, we come back a little bit, but taking a step back, as you said, you started off in working in social media in general, and then you got into your current role now. But I'm curious to see how that journey kind of prepared you for where you are now, because you also mentioned that looking forward, you have certain goals and you believe that what you're doing now is helping you towards those goals. So how do you think that you can prepare for the unknown, in a sense, and what helped you and what will help others prepare for an unknown future?
Yeah. I think it's in work wise, saying yes to every opportunity that aligns with you. And I previously have always said yes to everything so that I can get the experience, especially at the start, or not even at the start of any point in your career, because you never know who you're going to meet, you never know what you're going to learn. And I think that, like, truly believe that that's why I am where I am, because I said yes and I took a risk. I took a risk moving to England. I had no job. I wasn't even looking for a job. And then I saw this role and or in the social media team and couldn't say no. And then within that, I've taken every opportunity possible. It's putting your hand up for things, saying I'll help out and try something new. And you learn so much. And also on the side of saying yes, it's also being willing to learn as well, because lots of people, especially experimentation, is all about learning, but lots of people don't want to say they don't know something. And if we're honest with ourselves, no one knows everything. It's so they can't, apart from maybe ChatGPT, but even ChatGPT doesn't. And so I always, where possible, try to learn from people and absorb as much information as possible. Um, I have really amazing manager right now who's helping me learn so much that will progress me to the next area. And it happened in my previous roles, in Australia when I worked at the airport. My boss there taught me so much about social media and marketing, and learning that really helped to get this role now,
Mm.
because they were looking for someone and I had experience specifically in like an area that my old manager taught me, which was like paid advertising.
Mhm.
And no one in the team at DOAC at the time had experience in paid advertising. And so it was something that allowed me to have a competitive advantage, that then they said, actually, Grace can come in and do this. It's going to be an amazing help. We don't have to find someone external, like a freelancer, to do it. Um, and it was something I completely owned.
Yeah.
And doing that within the social media team, I would report on it, and share the results, share what we tested. That then led Steve to saying, hey, you do this so naturally. Do you want to do experimentation across the whole team? Which feels really full circle. So if I had never learnt paid ads from my first manager when I worked in the airports, I never would have been in the social media team for DOAC, and I never would have then been in experimentation from showing that in the social. And so you just never know where it's going to take you. And I think it's that whole thing of saying yes, and absorbing as much information as you can, no matter what stage you are in your career. And I still try to do it every day.
One of the challenges for many women is that you want to know it all before you say yes to something, but that kind of blocks you from saying yes to things that you can learn, that you don't know yet, that will then help you get, as you said, for yourself to get into a new position or a new role and so on. And especially, I think now where we don't even know what we might need to know in the future, if we feel like we need to know it beforehand, we'll never get there. So I think that mindset is super important. And unfortunately, coming back to women and girls being taught to be perfect and take less risks, it challenges us. So, but then again, we can continue, as you said, again, throughout our lives. It's not something that has to stop after school or whatever. If we continue to be open to learning, then hopefully that will help all of us grow. That's really nice. I'm curious to hear, obviously, you run experimentation and failure, but how does that translate into the rest of the organization? And if someone in a different position, different role, someone listening is curious to experiment, as we talked about, and how you can do it on your own, but how can you also maybe introduce that into a company that might not be open to that, or have that mindset yet? How would you introduce concept of experimentation and failure?
Yeah, it's definitely about safety, and trust within your team. And the more, if you're going to be the one that's interested in introducing experimentation, you can't expect people to want to change what they're doing just because you say something is a good idea, or you believe that they should be doing it this way. People can get set in their ways and think they should be doing the job that way instead of trying new things. And it can happen a lot. It's hard to actually gain that trust. I think it's easier when someone, so I was social media team for 2.5 years, um, and knew the team, and I knew I wasn't just coming into a company to try and change things or tell them how to do their jobs. Um, they knew I wanted the best success for the business as well, and we were all interested in the success of the company. And so we had that original trust to then say, hey, let's try these new things. And they know that I was there for good reason. So the one thing would be, before you go and suggest anything to anyone, make sure you have the trust and respect both ways, um, to say, hey, I think what you're doing is amazing, but I think maybe we could improve it in this way, or would you be open to trying new things and experimenting? But the other hard part of it is, if it's not in their goals or KPIs, then it's quite hard to get people to want to change their behavior to do it. And so really, in that side does come top down in the company, of it has to be part of people's goals for them to want to dedicate the time towards doing it. But then there's another side of, lots of people out in the world already have that itch to try new things, to experiment, to grow. I think it is somewhat an innate human behavior to want to be better, and strive for success. And so you just have to find that unlock in people, that they do want to do better in their roles. And I'm very grateful to be surrounded by so many people in the company that are like that. I know not everyone in the world is, but people, it can come out of people if you find the right way to connect with them.
Thank you. We've covered a lot, but is there something that you find it important on around the topics that we have talked about that we maybe not have covered, something that you'd like to share?
I think for me, there's a really interesting ground, of how experimentation also kind of relates to like finance in the way of investing. And I think like investing, whether it's like, through something like Hargreaves Lansdown or Vanguard, where you're investing in the stocks and shares market, it is almost experimenting because you're taking a risk. And the whole point of like the whole discussion of failure is very kind of prominent in that as well, because not every investment is going to be successful. I don't know if the saying is still like 9 in 10 will succeed, but maybe the one that succeeds will outweigh your losses of the 9 in 10. And that could be the same with experimentation. It could be 9 experiments come back inconclusive or as failures, but one is a success, and you could learn so much from that one experiment that it outweighs anything you may have not learned from the other 9. And I really love the analogy of how that's so close between investing
Yeah.
and experimentation in general, and that failure can come across both of them, but there's so many learnings.
Well, yeah, I haven't made that sort of link between the two, but that's really, really interesting. And yeah, really encouraging to try and to fail and to learn
Yeah,
and really uh, also to invest and be
yeah.
open also to not be perfect, because I think that's the other thing that
Mm.
often happens with women and or those who are not so familiar with investing is that it's so important to get it right. And I hear that I should be making at least 8% a year, and how am I going to know that I pick the right things, even if you pick you know index funds or whatever. So again, you don't try because you're fearing of failure and fearing of not getting it right, but you also learn from those failures, whether it's an investment or some kind of other experimentation with your personal and professional life.
Yeah, and I think it's trying to reframe your mindset around experimenting with your investments and
Yeah,
see, trying not to see it as money for now, seeing it as money for later.
yeah,
And I have lost in some and I've made in some,
yeah,
like, and all of them are experiments. I don't do enough research into them. Like, I chose Rolls-Royce and then I chose Boeing. And Boeing did really badly. Rolls-Royce did insanely well when I chose to invest in it. And since then, and it's super interesting because I lost on some,
yeah.
won on some. And that's the whole game of experimenting as well. It's like you'll lose on
Mhm.
some, win on some, and that's life. And there's so much we can learn from it, though, I think. And I love how it relates between both. And that's why I love investing as well, because it's somewhat experimenting at the same
Yeah.
time.
And I think it's interesting how yeah, some then will refrain from the possibility of both learning and gaining, because the fear of losing and the fear of not getting it right on some cases outweigh the sort of the potential upside, and so they will stay in that comfort zone instead
Yeah.
of opening up to new possibilities. Yeah.
And it is wild of the risk. It's actually scarier to not take the risk, I think, because imagine if you hadn't chosen to invest in something that does well. And like I can say the percentages. I think when I invested in Boeing, I think I lost like 40% straight away. I was like, oh no. And that was the start of last year, I think. And then I think I invested in Rolls-Royce around the same time, and that has now gone up 380%, which is
Wow.
like I know that is unheard of. But
Amazing. Well done.
but the thing is, imagine if I just been like, oh, I lost money there. I don't now want to invest money anywhere
No,
else.
exactly. Yeah.
And you just don't know. Obviously, 380% is insane, but I think it's this risk taking of being like actually trying. I tried to see it as like not real money,
Yeah.
and
Learning money.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
then you don't feel as, especially I obviously am very grateful I don't have like a scarcity mindset, but I can imagine it's really hard having a scarcity mindset to then feel comfortable with it. But the more you can learn and take that opportunity for potentially a future where you could have that extra money. And also, it's about realizing it's a long-term game. Even
Yeah.
though I've made money from Rolls-Royce, I'm sure I'm not going to be touching it for 40 years, maybe. So it could go down by then. It's all long term.
By then the Rolls Royce will be flying. So
Yeah.
probably
So
they'll have
hopefully
merged with Boeing or something.
I do.
Yeah, that's nice. But also, I mean, as you said, a little bit, I think that's also quite a nice trick to not, in a sense, not seeing it as real money. And especially if you kind of combine that with what you're doing with your lunch money. So you're taking money that you would have basically spent anyway, and moving that into an investment or savings account that you can then experiment with. Because if you hadn't cooked, you would have spent that money and would have been gone forever. Now you're changing your behavior, you're taking that money, you can do something else with it. So
Yeah. And I think it's also realizing that money, like me saying I'm saving £10 from lunch, you don't have to invest a lot. And because I think on social media, it's people that talk about investing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and really it just starts small. It's just about the habit of actually starting, and it's something I try to tell because there's people around me that don't invest,
yeah,
and it's never too late to start investing, and it's never too small of an amount to start investing because it adds up over time,
yeah,
compounding interest.
yeah.
And my biggest regret is that I wish I started
Earlier.
earlier.
Yeah.
And it's funny now that I talk about it with people, is one of my friends at school did invest when we were in school because her dad was invested in the stock market. And I was like, God, I wish I started in school because I'm now 10 years behind. But the best next chance is now.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always telling people, like, even if it's £10, £20, whatever you can put in is worth putting in because you're starting that habit. And also setting up automatic transfers because then you don't have to start the habit, it just does it for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think those are super practical and really easy ways to do it, and it doesn't take a lot of time to start that way.
Yes.
That's definitely something I encourage as well, just to make it easy, and don't beat yourself up for what you haven't done, because you can always look forward, and as you said, the next best is to start today. The best would have been to start yesterday or 10 years ago or whatever, and we all wish we did, but
Yeah.
we're living longer, hopefully most of us, so we have more time for the future. That's the upside, you know.
True. So true.
The upside, but also another very good reason to invest, because again, if you're looking at it from the women's perspective, we tend to live longer as well and outlive men. So we have a longer run to both to invest, but also to use those investments at a later stage in
Well,
life.
yeah. And the thing is, it's worth investing now because you never know when you might need that money for any circumstance, whether it's retirement, whether it's a separation or an emergency. That's why I'm still working on building up my emergency savings more. But I started yeah, more of that rather than just investments, looking at other things as well to start saving towards.
Yeah, absolutely. That gives you the peace of mind. And I think what we talked about to round things off around wealth. And for me, wealth is also knowing that I can make those decisions independently of jobs, potential partners, whatever might be. You have that peace of mind of knowing that you can make independent decisions, and that's a big wealth for me. So yeah.
Definitely. I love that.
Thank you so much. I love that conversation. I loved how we weaved in experimentation with money, with investing, some really practical tips that you shared, which I will definitely make sure that we put in the highlights of the notes as well, because I love when there are concrete takeaways. Thank you so much, Grace. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.